I think there should be a massive focus on schools. I think they're huge hubs for where sports activity is taking place. So opening up their assets and marrying them to the likes of parks, in particular in leisure centres, is a huge area. So I'd say it's about making better use of the school assets and, if possible, enforcing sports policy in that area. So if it's a public school, for example, if you can come up with anything to make better, well, to at least get them to share their assets with local communities, that's a huge start. And then for state schools, it's about working on things like, at the moment there's huge planning restrictions in that area. I think policies should look at kind of allowing them to have things like floodlights and basically unearth and enable them to use their assets more. It saves having to build more. So the thing I would say in the first policy is making better use of existing assets rather than building a whole load of new ones. Digital, I think, could be huge as well. I think it should become a massive part of sports policy over the next 10 years. There's huge opportunities to break down barriers. The way that should be tackled is for sports bodies to partner with entrepreneurs and people who work in the tech community, rather than trying to do these things themselves. Again, in digital, it's about enabling and encouraging people to come up with ideas and test them on a small local level, rather than sports bodies and Sport England predominantly doing these things themselves. They need to look for more partnerships, and that applies hugely in digital. Yeah, one of the biggest problems I have is, I mean, obviously we're a private sector and trying to innovate. Currently, a lot of funding is predominantly for not-for-profits or social businesses, and I think it really depends on what the aims are for your organisation. So there are problems for people trying to innovate in terms of access to capital, especially when it's not necessarily a lucrative market in the kind of grassroots sports industry. So there's a bit of a funding problem. So I think Sport England should look at making that easier. Often innovators and entrepreneurs will use capital very, very efficiently, probably more efficiently than Sport England can. They tend to operate very leanly. So there needs to be a fundamental change to allow private companies access to some of the funding opportunities which the not-for-profits have at the moment. In 5 years, you could, I mean, yes, well, essentially 5 years now, you could achieve a lot. I mean, some of the fundamental changes that you could have is turning the monitoring and evaluation on its head. I mean, this applies to digital, but currently you have the active people survey where people would call to find out who's active. This would turn that on its head. So you could be much better stats, accurate stats. It would save a fortune in terms of having to have people calling out, and it would, once set up properly, would do it automatically. In order to do that, you do have to. I mean, one of the biggest things that Sport England, for example, need to do is to identify where all the source of the data are and get that feeding into them. But that should make the whole monitoring and evaluation process so much more efficient and so much more accurate. So I think by 2012 that could be huge. The other thing is breaking down barriers. Going back to digital, what it does is it helps with communication between people. Currently, if you want to go out and play basketball with someone, who do you go to? Where do you go? That information can be completely broken down, and I think that's probably the most exciting thing that could happen in 2020. I think the result of that should be more people playing. We'll see. It's difficult to say at this stage, but I would have thought if Sport England takes the brakes off innovation, allows people to try things and partners with them, that could have a huge impact on the number of people playing active.